In this presentation, I'll be discussing how the survival horror genre of gaming has evolved since 1989. I'll be explaining and diving into the trends and mechanics present in the most influential games from each era. In the first era of survival horror gaming, there were two very influential games that actually formed the foundations for what was then to come from survival horror. These games were Alone in the Dark and Sweet Home. Sweet Home was a 1989 top-down survival horror game that was very much formatted like Pokemon in the way that it did everything from battles, movement and character to NPC interactions. But it was the first game to implement a survival horror element into this. Now, it was created in Japan but was released nowhere else due to the horrific imagery that was used in cutscenes and for death scenes. It was very bad, even for the time, it was bad. What followed Sweet Home was Alone in the Dark. Now, Alone in the Dark was a much more complicated game in its mechanics and the way it was run. It still was based in a mansion, it still had very limited interactions between characters and hostiles, and all the hostiles were all still like zombies and ghosts and things like that. However, it was based on a 3D platform, which means that you could move anywhere on the screen, not just left, right or forwards, backwards. You had depth, you had width, everything was there at this time, and that was a massive step forwards for all gaming. Now, interactions were still very minimal. You could barely talk to anyone, move anything in the environment. However, it was based around a Metroidvania subject. This meant that it was much stronger and popular within main audiences due to the complexity of the game. It meant people wanted to play it over and over again to make sure they always got what they wanted. Now, Metroidvania was sort of the child of Metroid and Castlevania, two very unrelated games. These games shared near to no functions or mechanics whatsoever, apart from one, which was the fact that to get to new places in the games you would have to find an object or develop a way to get through to a new area. Metroidvania games are mainly large interconnected maps where you have a different way to get through each one. So this could be via puzzle solving, which is very key in survival horror. It's one of the biggest interactions that you can do. It's puzzle solving, finding keys and things like that to let you into new areas, and without doing this you can't move on in the game, and that allows for developers to squeeze more game time out so they have to do less work, but it also increases game time for players, and players want game time. As a gamer, I know that game time is probably one of the most important things, just below quality. The next era in the survival horror genre was the defining period. Now, this mainly consisted of Resident Evil and Silent Hill. These games were massively developed compared to Alone in the Dark and Sweet Home due to their graphics, their game design, their enemy interactions. Everything just took a massive step forwards for these games. In 1996, Resident Evil was created and immediately became a hit. It struck out everywhere, from films, books, gaming, comics. It covered everything just from this one simple idea that was created. Now, Alone in the Dark and Silent Hill were very similar, apart from one very critical thing, which was the character interactions. You could interact with other characters in the game at any point. You could physically injure enemies at any time in the game. You could just hit them with a bat or shoot them or whatever you wanted to. You could directly interact with your scenery. After Resident Evil in 1996 came Silent Hill in 1999. This was a completely different game to Resident Evil in the fact that it was very open world and was procedurally generated. Procedurally generated is where the map is produced as you walk through the game, pretty much. And this would be a problem for the game developers because you would not be able to hide the edge of the world. But then they came up with the idea to add fog into the game, which was originally just used to hide the edges of the map. But because of a glitch that happened in the programming, it became very thick and very forefronted, and it added this horrible eeriness to this game, which allowed for the player to become scared even more quickly because you never knew what was lurking in the fog and you felt more isolated. Isolation is a huge part of survival horror games as it makes you feel so alone and you just don't know what's around you and you don't have anyone to help you when this happens. Also, these two games, Resident Evil and Silent Hill, both used limited inventory systems, and you had to focus massively on inventory management. In Silent Hill it was less of a problem because you were given the direct incentive to avoid contact because you were an everyman. An everyman is just like you or me, has no real military training, doesn't know how to fire a gun. If you try and fire a gun, you're probably going to miss. So they underemphasized combat and emphasized running away from it and using stealth, and that actually moved a different way to a lot of survival horror. It gave the actual survival feel to it rather than a shooter. And talking of shooters, next up is the development period. This is the era between 2000 and 2010 where everything just picked up massively and everything just got developed in such a massive way. The first of these was Fear. Now, Fear was a linear first-person shooter where you were just going through loads of different environments, sorting out horrible incidents that had happened throughout the world. And in this, you had a really restricted area of movement. However, this allowed you to travel through so many different scenarios, facing so many different enemies, which was very new and to the sort of horror genre, because you were normally just stuck in a mansion or one place. Silent Hill struck out as a town, but this was very new and different, and that is what people liked. After Fear came something that everybody loves, and that is BioShock. Now, if you don't know what BioShock is, it is a sort of retro, techie kind of game set under the war, set under the Atlantic Ocean in a city called Rapture. Now, this city is full of horrible things that have happened, and just everyone's life who was there is just going wrong, and it just strikes you as a horrific game, not by just the monsters that are there, but by the consequences that have happened. There's a massive emphasis on inventory management for that, mainly just keeping an eye on your ammunition, but there's not really much loot you can pick up, which is nice because you don't have to worry too much. Again, it's quite Metroidvania, so you have to explore everywhere to make sure you get the most out of the game. BioShock gave us something new in the series, which was gore. Dismemberment was a massive part of the game, as killing enemies, shooting them in certain places would tend to rip off a limb or a head or something like that. And that is something new that wasn't really allowed before this, but they pushed the boundaries and made it creepy. They also involved children in the game, and you could kill children, which was brand new to the genre, because before it was just adults running around or a child being locked up in a cage somewhere that you would save and he'd go back to his mother. But now they were actually involving them as characters that could die, and you would have consequences for this. And consequences and choices were born from this game, as well as the next game I'm going to talk about, which is Dead Rising. Dead Rising is a third-person open-world zombie shooter horror where you play a photojournalist running through a mall covering a zombie outbreak. The first zombie outbreak. There were 4 of these games, all of them were amazing. Now, Dead Rising threw the game in another direction again, because it had even more inventory management, and all of these items would break or could be used up so fast, so you constantly had to refresh of what you were doing, and it just caused so much tension with the player when you were surrounded by a horde of zombies. And after this came Left 4 Dead, which was another first-person zombie shooter. This did make me notice something. Around 2010, like 2009, 2010, everyone went absolutely zombie mad. Now, after having a little bit of looking around, I found out that the cause of this might have been Zombieland, as it was released around the time that all of the zombie-like plume of expansion of the zombie genre and the popularity of it happened. So here is a trailer of Zombieland.
You got a pretty mouth.
Welcome to Zombieland. It's like a greatest hits collection of nightmares.
Well, you work all day while you want to play. At the end of the day, when your work is done, you ain't got nothing but fun.
Gotta enjoy the little things. I'm not easy to get along with. And I'm sensing you're a bit of a wuss.
We're actually one of the few non-zombies left, because we always play it safe.
Drive slow, keep your eyes peeled.
Bummer.
We got taken hostage by a 12-year-old.
Little girls mature way faster than boys.
My sister and I are gonna do whatever it takes to survive.
I love you.
Love me too.
I haven't cried like that since Titanic. My mother always told me, someday you'll be good at something. I don't think she could have guessed that something would be zombie killing.
Time to nut up or shut up.
Oh, I love this song.
How about we play the quiet game?
I've actually been meaning to ask you.
Have you never played the quiet game?
Your sister, she's single, right?
You ever read that book, She's Just Not That Into You?
What do you think?
Zombieland.
You guys want some Puro?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, as you can tell, Zombieland was a hugely mixed film of horror, comedy, action, romance. There was a bit of rom-com in there, as you probably spotted near the end. And that variety dragged in audiences from every single genre. And that is what made it so popular, and that is what made the explosion of zombies. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the Renaissance period that we're currently in. This area of the survival horror genre has been massive because of the technology advancements and everything. Enemy mechanics have become insanely good in all the games, especially The Last of Us and Alien Isolation. Now, The Last of Us is a linear survival horror game where you play a man named Joel, and he is escorting a young lady across a zombie-infested America. Now, this game is very different from any other zombie game you'd have played before because it has true story and feeling and emotion to it, and this game made so many people cry and scream within the course of 5 minutes. Just by the way that the enemies were so terrifying, and the intelligence behind some of the enemies, such as the clickers, was so strong because they would go by sound, and the floor, if you stepped on a certain item on the floor, it'd make a certain noise, and this all just made you so tense when playing to make sure you didn't do anything wrong. And Alien Isolation was very similar in the way that you were being hunted by this thing called a xenomorph, which is everyone knows as an alien. So it never followed a set path, apart from on certain scripted events, but it would always know how to find you, and it would actually be intelligent. It wouldn't instantly go, oh, he's over there, or oh, she's over there. It would actually think about it and think, oh, are they there? Because it wasn't programmed to know where you are. So that was what made that game terrifying, and that's what made all of the new games terrifying, because there was intelligence behind it and the enemies were smart. Now, I don't know where the future of this genre is going to go, but I hope it carries on in the same way, making intelligent enemies that are smart and terrifying. Thanks for watching this video. Sorry it dragged on a little bit. Thank you.